Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gorowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are well into June now. It has been a crazy week as we kind of wind down the school year. We didn't want to let you go without some ocean action. So tomorrow is World Ocean Day. So all week we've been having live ocean events connecting with scientists and explorers, conservationists, filmmakers, learning about how they document, how they protect, how they study our blue planet. And so several events. I was live in New York at the Explorers Club for their World Ocean Week. So I hosted a lot of events there where I had some speakers join me in person, others join virtual, and we're not going to leave today without some more events. So we have a great event coming your way right now. And then right after that, to wrap things up, we're going to connect live with the exploration vessel Nautilus, Bob Ballard's ship. And they're on an expedition off the coast of British Columbia. So we're going to connect with the ship and see what they are up to. But before we do that, we have to spend a really fun time with Nicole Stott, who has joined us loads and loads of time. We always love having her hang out with us. She's explored from the heights of outer space to the depths of our ocean. She's a veteran NASA astronaut, so having experienced 2 space flights and 104 days living and working in space on both the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station. She is also a NASA Aquanaut. So to prepare for space flight, she went along on Nemo 9. So she lived and worked underwater for 18 days on the Aquarius undersea habitat. So it's the only underwater laboratory in the world in the Florida Keys. And we can't forget some other cool things. She is also an artist, and she combines her artwork and spaceflight experience to inspire creativity, thinking about solutions to our planetary challenges. So I'm going to bring Nicole in with us right now. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
I am great, Joe, and I'm really happy to be joining you guys today from a completely different place for me than my normal background is with you.
I know.
I'm in Old Jersey, a tiny little island over in the UK, and just off the coast of France, and it is gorgeous. I wish I could actually be right out on the beach with you. I'm sitting in this little really cool cafe called the Sands, and you can't get any. I mean, it is extraordinary the way the ocean looks out here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're having a great week. Usually we are connecting with you in Florida, and we have your spacesuit watching on in behind, but this is a pretty good view too.
I love that, with it being World Oceans Week, to be here in this place. We've actually been joining a really cool group called Ocean Culture Life that's all about giving a voice to the ocean. And there's been some amazing events going on with students from all over the island. We did a live stream today with kids all over the world, just like you are always supporting, which is really fun. And some cool ocean-y, spacey art that we've had happening as well. So I feel like it's appropriate that I'm actually here with you today.
Absolutely. And I just caught your name there where you got astronaut, aquanaut, artist. We can really just be Nicole Stott, AAA.
AAA, yeah.
AAA. All right. Well, Nicole, we've got a great group of classrooms as per usual, Canada and the US, tuning in via YouTube. Some of them are in camera spots. But before we meet them, we are going to dive into your world for a little bit. So I'll let you take over.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. When I do, just to let you know, I've got a quick little 2-minute video. I'm going to mute it so I'm not hearing it. I'll just give you a little narration as we go through. You can imagine engines lighting and all of that kind of thing on a space shuttle. I thought I'd show you some of the space stuff first from the 2 missions. And then I've got some really quick slides just to kind of compare this, what we call inner space, outer space preparation, going to live under the sea to prepare to live in outer space. And so I thought I'd show you some of the different things and how that compares, and then wrap it up with a couple little slides. And hopefully I'm really excited to get to the questions and answers. I think that's usually the most fun part. So let me go over to Joe. You let me know if it works. Can you see that?
It's loading up and it's going. Yep.
All right. I'm going to mute it on my end so I'm not hearing it. And this is just like Joe mentioned, I got to fly 2 times in space. This is a little view of my first launch, which was a minute before midnight back in August of 2009, which seems like so long ago. And we took that 8.5 minute ride to space on the Shuttle Discovery. Just some scenes from inside the vehicle, brushing your teeth in space. Got to do that there too. Greeting our crew members on the station, got to do a 6.5-hour spacewalk, which was really awesome. This is where my mom, though, I think she was the most afraid when I was out on the spacewalk. She's like, always, there needs to be 2-hand on the space station rule at all times. But you can't do that if you're going to work out there. Got to take advantage of the environment that you're in, just like we do when we're underwater. You know, you can float and fly, and it's never a good hair day. And we exercise 2 hours a day on the space station to keep our bones and our muscles strong, because when you're floating around in microgravity, your body doesn't think it needs bones or muscles anymore. Was inspired. I painted in space, was really thrilled to spend time with my crewmates up there doing all the work that we do that's ultimately about improving life on Earth. And we had extraordinary views of Earth from the space station. When I flew on the space shuttle, we landed on a runway. It's kind of like a big glider, heavy glider coming into that little chirp on the runway. Personally think that's the way we should be landing on our spaceships. My second flight was in early 2011. It was the final flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. And we went back to the station, but this time we were only there for about 2 weeks. I can tell you that that did not seem long enough after being there for several months. And when we did come home, they literally had to pull my clawing hands off the hatch to get me back in the shuttle to come back to Earth, because you never know when you might get that chance again to be in such an extraordinary space. This is really good views of joining up with the space station on the shuttle. We dock with the station, which is, if you see that view coming in there, the space station's about the size of a football field. And we bring the space shuttle in, open the 2 hatches, fun food in space. I mean, look at that. It is just this masterpiece in space. Best example of living off the grid you can find. You see that Earth below? It's very much an ocean planet, which is what we're here to talk about today. And that was the final flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. All right, and I think that should be the end of that. Let me see, next slide. Ooh, look at that. All right, so this whole idea of inner space to outer space, you know, being kind of surrounded by the planet to go learn how to explore off of it. And by living in inner space, undersea, we get the title Aquanaut. Joe knows this very well. And by flying to space, we get the title astronaut. And you can see we have some similar equipment that goes along with that. We have to protect ourselves in these extreme environments. We can't just, you know, we can float around in the water for a little while and hold our breath, but you're not going to be there long if you need to work in that place. So really cool special equipment that's designed for that. Scuba, or these, you know, these full helmets that we can wear. And very similar to what we put on when we go out on a spacewalk. We're living in these places that are designed to support our life in these extreme environments. Undersea, as Joe mentioned, the Aquarius undersea habitat. It's off the coast of Key Largo, Florida. It's about 60 feet underwater, about the size of a big school bus, like a big school bus. And we normally have a crew of 6 inside. It is extraordinary. But once you're down there for over an hour, you can't just swim safely to the surface because your body's so saturated with nitrogen. So just like when you're in space, and if something goes wrong, you can't just escape to the surface of the ocean. You have to deal with this with your crew at 60 feet underwater, get in a safe configuration before you can go back to the surface. And the same thing is true on a space station where you're orbiting Earth at about 300 miles above. We can't just jump in our spaceship anytime and come home. We've got to get in a safe configuration before we do that with our crew. And speaking of crews, oh my gosh, we are in this place undersea, in space. You're with people that are really, really exceptional. The kind of people you want to work with, where you're going to enjoy yourself. But at the same time, you know, when things don't go as planned, that every one of those people you're with will have your back. And you want that kind of thing to happen when you're under the ocean. You want that kind of thing to happen when you're in space. I think we want it to happen right here on the surface of our planet too, no matter who we're working with or what we're doing. And these are just some fun crew photos that we had in both of those places. And as the astronaut office and all the training that we do, these kinds of experiences, we call this expeditionary training, learning how to behave as a crew, discover your own strengths and weaknesses in these places, and how you'll bring them to bear together to have a successful mission. We work outside when we're in these places. Like that very first picture showed, we have the special gear to go out and be able to survive either at the depths of the ocean or in the vacuum of space. And it's really pretty extraordinary that we can do this as human beings, that we can design. I like to think about it, even when I'm undersea, like these little mini spaceships that keep us alive in these places. And it allows us to explore in a way that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. I'm a fan of robotic missions, you know, little robots and rovers going to places to explore and advance for us. But I think there's something about the human aspect of being in those places as well. So working outside, that's a really wonderful opportunity to have. And we work inside too, inside of our laboratory. You know, in space, we're doing all kinds of experiments, all of them ultimately, whether it's on ourselves or, you know, exploring the way new materials will be created or developed, looking at how fuels burn, whatever it might be, either inside our undersea lab or on our orbiting laboratory. There is science going on every day. And we can do that in a very similar way in both of these places, with the exception of the fact that being in space, what the scientists love about that is that we can take gravity out of the equation. And that allows us, because things behave so differently in that place, that allows us to learn things about things we thought we knew a lot about already, but we can take gravity out and discover a whole bunch more, which has been really, really beneficial for us. In space, we have that big robotic arm. We use robots in a lot of different ways. And in the picture on the right, you can see I'm strapped in my big white spacesuit, hanging onto a science box, and my feet are put into the end of this Canadian robotic arm, the Canada arm, that exists on both the space shuttle and on the space station. It allows us to move hardware and people and equipment around. It allows cameras on the end to inspect parts of our space station that we might not otherwise. And when we were on the Aquarius undersea habitat, we had a little undersea rover that we did that same kind of thing with. And we even had controllers, little hand controllers, kind of like a video game, that allowed us to fly that robot around and see things that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, and maybe get out into places that we weren't quite sure we should go as humans to begin with. And then once we feel comfortable with that, we can kind of follow that rover into those places. Same thing in space and in the sea. I always like to throw this one out because you know, you get the question all the time, how do you go to the bathroom in space? Well, the question is equally as intriguing, I think, about how you go to the bathroom in an undersea habitat as well. And I'll just tell you that on the Aquarius undersea habitat, we had this little white domed structure that sat on a grate outside of the main hab itself that was called the gazebo. And you would, you know, float out. It was about 5 feet. You kind of, you know, swam out to this little gazebo, and you popped your head up in it. It was kind of like turning a cup over in the water where the air stays up inside of it. And so you could pop your head up into it and then take care of business out there. Let me just tell you, those fish that are swimming around that gazebo, they are waiting for you to visit and provide them with special little treats in the ocean. I can give you a list of 3 fish in particular that you should not ever order from the menu, just because of what I know we were providing them out in the ocean. And on the right, you see the space station potty. You can see we have a little outhouse picture on the back. It's really cool. I like to think about this, you know, even in the sea and in space, there's a lot of things that are different. The way you have to move and what you eat and all of these things are different in these places, but they're not necessarily more difficult. They're just different. You have to get used to them. It's kind of part of the adventure of being in these places. And I'll just say, in space, everything's about floating, aim and speed, and that's regardless of whether it's you know, number 1 into a long hose with a yellow funnel on the end of it, or number 2 into that big metal can that you see sitting on the bottom of that picture on the right. And really quickly, for all of the fluid, the liquid waste that we have on board the space station, whether that's urine that you're providing here in the toilet, or that's sweat or condensation, or the water that's coming, you know, off your body after you take a bath, that all gets pulled into the system that allows us to recycle that into clean drinking water. It's a really cool system that we use on the station, and I think it's really, really interesting that we take that same kind of system and we bring it back to Earth, and they can repackage it and deploy it in places that have never had clean drinking water before. And that's a really cool thing to be able to do, to take this space tech and bring it back to Earth. The number 2 that goes in that can right there, we do not do anything else with that on the station. Once that can is full, it gets sealed up and goes into a cargo vehicle that burns up in the atmosphere. And as our Canadian astronaut friend Chris Hadfield would like to say, sometimes when you're out on a beautiful dark night and you see one of those shooting stars come burning up into the atmosphere, you just might think that that's not maybe a micrometeorite or a meteor coming back into the atmosphere. That might just be a cargo vehicle filled up with cans of astronaut poo. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not. One of the most extraordinary things about being in both of these places is the opportunity to experience Earth from a really unique vantage point. On the Aquarius undersea habitat, we are surrounded by the ocean. It's like we are the ones visiting. And I got this sense quite a bit that the fish and the sea life outside that would occasionally poke their faces up into the window were looking at us like, oh, hey, who's in the aquarium now? Like what guests do we have visiting? And that same thing was kind of true on the station looking back at Earth, although I never do remember anybody poking their head up into the window to see what I was doing inside. But it really awesome, wonderful. There was inspiration in that for me, both undersea and in outer space, where I felt like I needed to create. Humans flying in space and going under the sea have been bringing our humanity with us, putting the human, I like to say, in human spaceflight. So we've been creating an art in space since we've been flying in space, and that same thing is happening on the Aquarius undersea habitat. On the left, you can see a picture of the bottom of the hab. It's just covered in this beautiful, colorful, scene of life with coral and sponges. And so I use that as my inspiration for painting from the undersea, from inner space, and a really wonderful picture of this little chain of islands called Las Rocas on the northern coast of Venezuela that looked to me like a wave had been painted on the ocean. That was a picture I took in space, and while I was in space, I had the chance to paint with watercolors. Really wonderful, wonderful personal experience in space. And like I said, this week, I'm really happy to be able to be bringing these two things together, just like we are here on this call, sea and space, celebrating our ocean and the life that it brings to us, not just to the creatures that live in it. Every second breath we take is from the ocean, and we need to remember that. And it's really just really nice to be able to celebrate the ocean the way we do. And we should be doing that every day, not just on a World Ocean Day or World Ocean Week. And I'm just going to wrap up with Joe has heard this many times before. We go to space, and it's a really complex thing to do. To get to space, to live and work in that place, to come home safely, the science that we do there, all of what goes into being in that place. And I think we come back with some very simple lessons to share that affect us all. And I want to leave you with those today. And they are very simply, we live on a planet. We are all Earthlings. And the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that you can see pretty clearly in this picture that wraps around and protects us all. And we discover on this machine that we live on in space that we should be doing the same thing on our planetary spaceship. And that is to accept our role as crewmates and not passengers. And by doing that, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that is as beautiful as it looks from space. So I'm going to zip it now, and we're going to go to the Q&A, and I'm going to try to get back to you, Joe, with your little tricks that you have taught me here. Look at that.
All right. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Right. I tried to ramble fast to get through all that so that we can actually.
No, that was great. That was a great presentation, Nicole.
Yeah,
You answered what's pretty much the number one question. It doesn't matter if someone's rowing a boat across the ocean or living on the space station, or it doesn't matter what activity. Students want to make sure, how do you go to the bathroom? So they always want to know what that process is in strange situations. So.
It is. And Joe, what I think it really is like an indicator of is that, that's the easiest question to ask about what's it just like to be a human being in those places that seems so different to what we do day-to-day life. And, then after that, when you can talk about washing your hair in space or, floating and flying and all those things that are just part of being a human there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, while you were presenting, I pulled together a little Kahoot quiz. So we're going to give students a chance to do a little competition, friendly competition against each other, and see who comes out on the podium. So I'm going to share my screen. And while that pops up, if you are tuning in via YouTube, you can also use the chat sidebar now to start sending in some of your questions, and we'll work some of those in afterwards. But the screen should be up now. You need to go to kahoot.it, and then the PIN number is 883-9355. So there's tons of ways you can join. If you have one-to-one devices in your classroom, like tablets or Chromebooks, you could join that way. If not, your teacher could pop it up at the front of the classroom. You could shout out your answers to him or her. I know we've got some students at home today, so you can scan that QR code on a phone or a tablet, and it'll bring you right in. And then if you can't get in with technology, just take part and see how you do. So you don't have to come in if you can't get in. So I can see we've got some students, some classes joining us, which is great. We'll give it another moment to get a few more in there, and then we'll get our Kahoot going. And there, we got a Space Yeti in here. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Aquatic crabs. So we got the underwater world represented as well. Very cool. Yeah, so I did 5 questions today. There's some true and false, there's some multiple choice. The right answer is going to get you points. The quicker you put the right answer in, the more points you're going to get. That's how you can score your edge. So let's see what the screen is doing. All right, I think it's slowed down a little bit, so I think we can get some Kahoot going. All right, we're going to be counted in. 3-second timer. Any stragglers can get in quickly, but we are about to go. All right, first question. Which A doesn't, I should have said which A doesn't belong for Nicole below? Astronaut,
yeah, definitely.
artist, or Aquanaut? I typed that one too fast. So which A doesn't belong? Astronaut, accountant, artist, or Aquanaut? You have a few more seconds to get your answer locked in. There is a clue decoding there as well for you. And then, yeah, we'll see who's leading the podium to start. And although, Nicole, I don't know, it could be one of your skills as well, accounting. You might not have talked about it.
You just gave him the answer, dude.
Right at the end.
It's all done. It's all done.
All right.
I wouldn't say that I excel at it, but not bad. You don't want me doing your books or your your taxes, but
all right. So we can say you're not the person to send your taxes to then.
No, don't do that.
All right. Who is in first place? The inspired pony.
Ooh, it's close.
Next question coming up here. Another multiple choice. Aquarius reef base is about blank feet underwater. Is it 20, 40, 60, or 80? Aquarius reef base is about 20, 40, 60, or 80. And Nicole, did you see the groupers while you were down there?
I did. I almost shared a picture because I did a painting of them as well. We actually renamed them after my dogs, Stella and Lucy, because they would come, they come to the window every morning, every night, and then you might randomly see them around. And I even encountered them in the gazebo one morning, very early before the sun rose. That was, I wish I would have had a camera.
Absolutely. All right.
Ginormous.
Good job, crew. About 60 feet underwater. Let's take a look. Oh, inspired pony, not going to let go. We're going to another question. True or false? It's important to learn how to become a crew, both in space and underwater. Is that true or is that false? Important to learn how to become a crew, both in space and underwater. When was your last dive, Nicole?
My last dive, not too long ago. We were down in Turks and Caicos, probably about a month ago. And it's always so good. I mean, it's always so good to get in the water.
It is.
I'm bummed that we're not going to be here for this. It would be a totally different experience for me. I've never gone diving in water that's this cold. I mean, it's like 60 degrees right now.
Well, come up to Canada. We can cut some holes in the ice.
I know. You could train me.
All right. Let's go to the next question. And it is absolutely true. All right. We didn't have much movement on the
Look at that.
leaderboard. So I think it's Inspired Pony is hanging tough. Another true and false. All liquids are being recycled back into clean drinking water on the space station. So all liquids are being recycled back into clean water on the space station. Wasting nothing on the space station.
And we're doing it, you know, it's funny, we're doing it so efficiently now with whatever amount that is, that we don't really resupply water anymore. I mean, and that's a really good position to be in, to not, water's heavy. It's why we suck it out of all the food we send to space, you know?
Yeah.
And so if we can avoid that, it's a good thing.
Absolutely. It is true. So any liquid that can be recycled is, and like Nicole just said, they're not bringing it up to the station anymore because it's so efficient. That's some pretty impressive technology. And then hopefully we can use some of that same technology here on Earth. So lots of technologies from space can then be used down here. All right. Movement, but the pony, it's close though. It's close.
Close.
Fearless otter could swoop in. So let's see. True or false? Every third breath we take is from the ocean. True or false? Every third breath we take is from the ocean. A few more seconds to lock it in, and then we will see our podium.
Oh, look at us. We got a beautiful, I mean, it's so cool to be on the beach. Nice umbrella going up. Sunset's late here, so, you know, people are out. This little cafe it's opening back up in a few minutes, and it's just really, the ocean attracts us, doesn't it, Joe? It's a place we all want to be.
Yeah, no question. Okay, let's see our final board. So it's false. It's every second breath. So those great micro creatures in the ocean, phytoplankton and the like, are producing 50% of our oxygen. So here we go. We've got our podium coming up. Third place, the mountain deer.
Woohoo!
In second place, we have the fearless otter. And I wonder who's going to be up there. The inspired pony.
Look at that.
Let's go. All right. Thanks, classrooms, for playing along. I'm going to turn off the Kahoot music and come back from that screen share, and we are going to get down to some serious Q&A business. Like I said, if you're tuning in via YouTube, use the chat sidebar. But let's bring in a virtual class first. So Mr. Bedard is joining us. His students are in Calgary, Alberta. They're sending in some questions. But Mr. Bedard, do you want to read some of those questions out for us?
All right. Nicole, what education do you need for being an Aquanaut and astronaut?
Well, I mean, I can answer you from the standpoint of astronaut, because astronaut is what allowed me to become an Aquanaut, which I'm very grateful for. And so in the astronaut world, at least with NASA, and I believe with CSA and the European Space Agency and the others that are involved, like with the space station, right now, the educational requirements are really STEM related. So science, tech, engineering, math. You could be a medical doctor, an oceanographer, a geophysicist. And so what's nice about that, it's across the board. But in the future, I have this vision, and I think people imagine, where every job we're doing here on Earth, we are going to need in space as well.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question from Jace and Bronwyn. They're asking, what kind of food can you eat, and what is the easiest food to eat in space?
You know, we can eat pretty much any food except for stuff that gets really crumbly. So, for example, we don't use bread because, you know, bread gets really crumbly, and all those crumbs floating, you know, they might get in your eyes, you might breathe them in, they might get in your computers. You don't want that happening. So we'll use tortillas instead of bread. And in tortilla, it's really easy to use too, isn't it? You can wrap anything in it. And I don't think it was, there was something about the most difficult. That's the crummy stuff. You don't want to do it. You need to be right next to like the intake on the air conditioner or something to be able to eat something like that. And, but my favorite food was the Japanese curries. There's a really nice mix of food on the space station because we have these international partners, and all of the partners are providing something. So it's really quite delicious.
makes the world go round. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks for those great questions to
Thank
start.
you.
We'll check in with you again a
Thank
little
you.
later and see if more questions come up from
Thank
your
you.
group. All right. Let's go to Mrs. Denison's science class. There they are. Hey,
Hello.
everyone. Oh, I see people coming up.
We got some people trying to float, hopping and floating.
Max Bauer is up. Bauer's got a question for Nicole. Okay, do you ever feel nauseous in space?
Do you ever feel nauseous in space? You know what? I am so grateful to have not felt nauseous in space. There are those who do, but what I will tell you is nothing about the way your body responds to being on a boat or on a roller coaster or something that might make you sick down here on Earth. Nothing about that is going to let you know how you'll feel in space. So I always tell people, don't say, oh, I can't do roller coasters, so I can't go to space. Just do it. And even if you do get sick in space, I had a couple crew members who did not feel good the first couple days, and then it just goes away and they never felt it again. And when they flew again to space, it's like their body and their brain remembered, and they didn't get sick on their second flight. So it's really kind of neat the way our brains and our bodies respond and adapt to things. Very grateful I didn't get sick in space.
All right.
Thanks.
Do we have another question there? We can grab a couple before we check YouTube.
Paxton, come on down, Paxton.
Since in space you're kind of close to satellites, do you ever get Wi-Fi in space?
Okay, you're gonna have to say it one more time.
Come closer to me.
Since you're so close to satellites in space, do you ever get Wi-Fi in space?
You know, we do get Wi-Fi in space now. We didn't have it when I was there. We hadn't worked out all of the security protocols for it, but they have live interweb on the space station now. They have for years, and it's really great. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Last year, I was traveling to Bali, and we were doing some programs, space camps with kids there, and somebody asked, "Ooh, can we get a picture of Bali from space?" So I emailed my friend Steve Bowen, who was on the space station, and within 5 minutes, he answered me and said, "I think we're going to be passing over Bali tonight. I'll see if I can get a picture." And the next day, I had a picture of Bali from space to share with the kids. It was incredible. So it's a really great way to communicate now, just like we do down here on Earth. And the other thing it offers is a way for the crew members to share their experience up there that we didn't necessarily have. So we try in a very positive way to use social media to share the kind of work we're doing up there, pictures of the Earth from space, you know, aurora, all of these incredible things. And so NASA and some of the astronauts have sites that you can go check out if you're allowed to do so.
All right, very cool.
Thanks.
Get some more ready for us. We're going to come back your way, science class. I want to grab a few from YouTube here before we get too carried away. So this is from a 4th grade class in Virginia, and they're wondering, which is harder to adjust to, living underwater or living in space?
You know, I mean, that's a difficult question because they each have their own kind of unique things about them. And space, it was really, you know, first of all, figuring out if you're not going to feel well when you first get there. So you're wondering about that. And once you discover that, it becomes more about just moving and floating and flying in 3 dimensions and how you deal with that. And that can take people a while to become graceful when they're moving like that. And then underwater, it was more about, you know, really being comfortable in the equipment, remembering that you have to stay, you know, you can't go up above the height of the habitat. It was kind of the logistics of it that was a little bit more complicated than, you know, what we do in space. But I would say both of them, you know, those differences and those things you have to adapt to are really, really cool, you know, to be in a place like that and have the opportunity to adapt to something like that. It's really, really neat. I highly recommend it. And I wish everyone could get their head below the surface and maybe above the, you know, the line of the atmosphere and experience our planet the way you can from those places.
All right. We have an 8th grade class in Ontario, and they would like to know, did you do any experiments underwater?
We did. I mean, that was one of the points of being on the undersea laboratory, was to be able to do, experiments that were very similar to what we were going to do in space. And the mission that I was on, the Nemo 9 mission, we were really looking at kind of surface exploration. What are we going to need to do when we go back to the moon and when we go on to Mars? How are we going to explore out on the surface of those planetary bodies? So there were experiments associated with that, with building things in space. And then inside the habitat, we would do things, very, very much like what we do on the space station. We had experiments we did on ourselves. We drew blood on, and pulled our hair and put it in bottles and, saved it for the scientists. And we were looking at things like telerobotic surgery, where somebody in Canada was operating this Da Vinci robot and figuring out if we'd be able to remotely do surgery or suture up a patient when there's a little bit of a time delay. And so the answer is yes. Every day we were doing a mix of experiments, both inside and outside the habitat, just like we would be doing on the space station.
All right, let's go back to some camera classes. I see that our Calgary class has some more questions in the chat, so let's get those out here for us.
Is this about the eyelashes? How do you deal with being itchy or getting eyelashes in your eyes when you're in a spacesuit?
I'm really, really grateful I never got any eyelashes in my eyes. But, you see my hair, it's long. When I flew in space, It was long. You try to get it back as best you can. There's always going to be time where hairs are like floating in front of your space.
Okay.
Again, I'm grateful on my spacewalk, my real spacewalk, that didn't happen. My nose got itchy, but we have this little kind of cushy rubber thing that we use to clear our nose if we need to. So you can kind of push your head down and rub your nose on that if you want.
Cool.
But where that really was a problem was during the training for a spacewalk in the pool. And I don't know, so many times where I would get in the pool, I thought I was all good. And then an hour into the 6-hour run, there'd be a little hair, like, right around here. And I'll just tell you, it is incredible what we can ignore after, unless it was hurting me, I wasn't going to say I need to get out of the pool. But what you can forget about if it's not really, causing a problem. So I could forget about that hair for 5 hours while I was
Lots of mind over matter. It sounds like a couple of things.
It very much is. Yeah.
Adapting to being out in space and forgetting that you're itchy or hair irritating you or whatever. And how much oxygen do you bring with you underwater? Do you produce oxygen like you do up in space?
We weren't underwater. We had tanks that we had filled. What's really cool about the Aquarius habitat is there's kind of these lines, these umbilicals that run to the surface of the ocean. And there's this ginormous life support buoy up there. So there's airlines that come down into the habitat itself. There's ways for us with tanks that are already inside of that structure that allow us to refill our scuba tanks. And then we also tie in with umbilicals when we go out with the hard hat kind of dive helmet. So, but we're really dependent on the undersea habitat with that life support buoy on the surface.
Excellent.
All right, another great group of questions from our Calgary class. All right, science crew, I said I'd come back, so let's grab some questions.
Okay, take it away, Ollie.
Do you know or are you friends with anyone on the Artemis missions?
Yeah, all 4 of those people. I don't think they could have picked any better people to do that first crewed Artemis mission. Love seeing, Victor Glover and Christina and Reed on that flight. And then also to have a little bit of a international mix with our Canadian crewmate, Jeremy. It's going to be fantastic. And I cannot wait for them to be sending pictures back to us of Earth from space. And so we can all be inspired by that again.
Yeah, we've hosted Jeremy a few times, but we'll have to catch up with him. We haven't hosted him since the announcement, so it'll be fun to see what he's up to.
I am so happy to see him flying in space.
Yeah.
Do you play any sports like ping pong in space?
We do. And what's kind of fun is you can even, and we just kind of play around with it, right? I mean, you can go on the internet and look for I think it was Satoshi Furukawa playing baseball by himself in space. He was, he'd hit the ball, he'd float down to the other end of the module, catch the ball, throw it back. It was really pretty cool. And then we've had people playing football in space. And what's neat about ping pong, and you can use like just a piece of cardboard or something, or a piece of, a file or something, and you can actually play ping pong with a ball of water. So that's kind of neat. It's a little bit different. You kind of adapt to where you are and make the game, more fun. And we think we're hopping around in space. We just kind of float around. And our hair does something like that when we're up there too. Yep.
All right. Do we have one more before I go back to YouTube?
Go ahead, Alicia.
If you had a chance to go back to either space or the ocean, which one would you choose?
I would yes to both, and I'm hopeful for both. And like I said, I highly recommend both. It's hard. I was on my friend Christina, who's here. She's just off the camera here. She and I were on this live stream thing today where somebody asked that whole question. Well, what is your favorite, the sea or space? It's like asking who your favorite kid is. You can't do that.
Absolutely. All right, Mrs. Denson's crew, great questions. All right, let's see. What should we take here from YouTube? Was the training similar for the Aquarius mission like you would for a space mission? Do you train as hard?
You do train as hard. A lot of it was very different. Like for me, a big part of it was kind of mentally adapting to what I was going to need to do underwater. I had been a scuba diver for years, but recreational, I didn't want somebody taking my mask off. I didn't want somebody messing with my regulator or making me, swim without my mask on and searching for lines and, all of those things. I didn't want that. I really just didn't like that. And so I had to figure out how to overcome that. I spent a lot of time in the neutral buoyancy lab, that pool that we learned how to do spacewalks in with some of the divers there, at 40 feet saying, okay, swim the length of the pool and back without your mask on, figure out how to get comfortable without your regulator in your mouth, don and doff your equipment, help rescue somebody, things that are a little bit uncomfortable. And I knew I had to do that before I got down there to do the training that we were going to do to be on the mission. And I am so grateful for that. The level of comfort I have in the water now by kind of pushing my comfort level just in general with it it's amazing. So Joe, I just had to tell you, when my son Roman went to get his scuba cert, he did the junior PADI thing when he was 10 or 12, whatever that is you can do. And he was always very comfortable in the water. So I told his instructor, who was one of the NBL divers, I said, okay, I just want you do what you have to do. But they had changed the regulations at that point to where you didn't have to do buddy breathing anymore.
Really?
It was weird. And I'm like, why would you not? Because everybody's carrying these ponies. I want him to know how to do buddy breathing. I want him to know how to rescue somebody, get it, lift somebody up out of the water. And so he did all that stuff. I was so impressed in water that had 3 feet visibility that I would never want to be in a lake in Texas. But it is very similar. The thing that underlies all of it and why going to inner space, undersea, to learn how to live and work in outer space is, first of all, it's very much about working like a crew in an extreme environment, something that's very similar to what it's going to be like in space. And then it's all of the things that you have to learn to do in space, you're going to have to learn to do on an undersea habitat as well. It's just different. One of them's you're still going to be in the air, and the other one you're not.
All right. Well, Nicole, it is so good to catch you in Jersey. Very, very cool.
Jersey.
Of course, we love the studio as well back in Florida. But it's great to see you enjoying your time out there, hanging out. I'm sure you're hanging out with students there too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so great that you spent a little Ocean Week with us. I want to give a huge shout out to our classrooms who had so many good questions today. Both our camera classrooms and the YouTube crew. And thanks for playing Coot with us. It's always fun.
Really great. Joe, thanks for always including me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Before we go off, let's let it get a little loud here. Miss Dennison's group, if you want to get a little loud, represent Calgary, Alberta.
Love it, you guys.
Very cool.
Oh, look at that book. Are you guys? That's
That's what they're
required
holding up,
reading,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, show me the book again. I'm gonna take a picture of you, if I'm allowed.
Yeah. Do you guys want to
Miss
hold the book
Dennison's
up?
class. Hold that really special book up there.
Let
Woo!
me
Yes.
isolate them for you. Here.
All right, one more time. Hang on a second. I got to get that little piece of hardware up there. Okay. Yes. Love it.
All right. Very cool.
Thanks, you
Thanks
guys.
so much, everybody, for joining us. Nicole, enjoy the rest of your trip, and I can't wait to
I will
connect
do that.
again.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, everyone.